Welcome to the podcast. It's Chris Graham and Scott German. We're going to talk some UVA and ACC sports. We promised the other day that we were going to start talking UVA basketball, but we got to actually start when we finished that podcast. We had not heard the news that Virginia Tech has gone ahead and hired James Franklin to be the new head football coach, and we got to go into that just for a minute or two, or three or four. Scott, you wrote a column about this today. I wrote a column about this when the news came down Monday night. Um, I mean, it's a big hire. We had been talking about this just personally for a few days before the news came out. Just when the discussions were out there, hey, maybe they are talking with him. Let's see what happens. I'm still surprised that that this news is what it is. That Virginia Tech and James Franklin came to terms and are going to be in a relationship now. What are your thoughts?
Well, it would kind of sound of sour grapes if we didn't at least acknowledge it for what it is. It's a good hire for Tech. I mean, as far as if you're going for the name, it's probably the best hire they could have got, unless they maybe somehow convinced Brian Kelly to come to Blacksburg. But I think it's a good hire. But again, I question were they bidding against themselves? Because you can't tell me if LSU or Auburn or Florida, if any of those schools had wanted James Franklin, he would have gone there. No, this is not anything negative against Tech, but Virginia Tech is not LSU, it's not Florida, and it's not Auburn. Those are all SEC schools with a lot of money, and you can't. I'm just surprised that none of those schools were calling on James Franklin.
I'm not seeing. I just scanned a story because Tech officially rolled him out today. Press conference in Blacksburg today. I've
Made
emailed.
it sound like it was Detroit rolling out a new car off the assembly line, a new model.
Yeah, yeah. So when the email came in to my inbox on Monday night from Virginia Tech Athletics Communications, the person who is the SID for football, sent it out. I emailed right back to say, "Hey, are you guys going to be releasing any contract details, or do I need to submit a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request on that?" Guy never got back to me, so I went ahead and submitted a FOIA request, and they didn't release anything today on that. So, in terms of making public the contract detail, I still will be interested to see. Um, I mean, obviously the top line detail, what he's going to be getting paid, how long the contract runs. These days, they usually run 6 years, so we'd be talking through 2031. Ironically, his deal at Penn State was to run through 2031. He had signed an extension that was going to keep him there for 6 more years before he got fired last month after a 3-3 start, just a few months after taking Penn State to the semifinals of the CFP. So that makes a lot of sense from their perspective. But not just the details I'll be looking for, not just that. I'd love to see um, for example, with North Carolina's contract with Bill Belichick, which they did not make anybody FOIA, they just sent it right out. They were like bragging about it, like, "Hey, look at this, we got Bill Belichick." Um, his contract, we got, what not only what Belichick was making, what his buyout was, how long the contract was going to run for. Also, though, spelled out in detail by Carolina was what his budget was for his assistant coaches and what the budget was for NIL. I will be curious to see if Franklin and his agent negotiated that into the contract to, make Virginia Tech basically pay up. That kind of detail is not in Tony Elliott's contract, though I will point out that I guess Tony Elliott signed with Virginia in 2021. I don't know that I don't think we were in the NIL era quite yet in 2021. So if he signs an extension, we might see some things like that in his going forward. But no, there's some things I want to see there. And I'll throw out here too, and I don't care about sour grapes. We are a Virginia athletics podcast. Um, Sour grapes, whatever it is, good hire for Virginia Tech. It's only a good hire though if they give him the resources to work with. Um, I'll be one reason you hire a head coach, I mean, whoever you hire to be your head coach, is because not just of what that person brings, but you got to bring a staff with you. He's got right now his staff is still sitting up in Happy Valley, so they probably won't be there very much longer. But they're still playing a season up there at Penn State. How many of those guys will he bring down with him? How many people that have spread out across the diaspora will he bring in with him? Because you're only as good as your staff, you're only as good as your resources in terms of the money Virginia Tech can give him to work with. So those are the questions I've gotten. It's not just for Virginia Tech, it'd be for anybody. I mean, whoever you're hiring as your head coach in football at any school in the country, that's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the Penn State staff is probably very well paid. Um, can can Virginia Tech, you know, afford a staff to pay a staff as much as Penn State's paying? Maybe they negotiated that into his contract. Maybe he took a little less money and spread it out among his staff. We're not certain of that, but um, they're not going to come down from Penn State to Blacksburg uh, Happy Valley to Blacksburg to make less money. And I think for Virginia fans, the concern, if it is a concern, is does an Anthony Poindexter, does a Marcus Hagans follow him? And I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I think it all depends on the money. They're not, neither one of those are going to come to Blacksburg to work for James Franklin and take a pay cut. I can guarantee you that. So lot to play out. Be interesting to sit back and watch this.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up real quick, and I wasn't able to as we're talking here. The difference in what Penn State spends on athletics overall, and then what Virginia Tech does. I'll have to do that for a future column, probably around the time I get my FOIA request answered by Virginia Tech. I'll have that information certainly. Um, but we know it's a lot more. I mean, Penn State as a top tier Big Ten program, not just a Big Ten program. Even the lower tier Big Ten programs spend more than your average ACC programs. Um, but Penn State being one of the big three up there with Ohio State and Michigan, and Virginia Tech being, I mean, no offense, and I'm not just saying this. It's on the bottom end of the ACC spectrum in terms of spending. That's why they're talking about, down there, the Board of Visitors approved a plan a few weeks ago to try to inject more money, to raise more money to inject into athletics, um, because they are so far behind the times in spending. So, easier said than done. You got to go find the money. You just don't say we're going to raise $229 million over 4 years. You can say that, but you got to go find that $229 million. And we know most of that will go to football. Not all of it, but most of it will go to football. They've also got to still pay. I mean, they got to pay him. They got to pay a new staff. They got to pay for NIL. They still got to pay a coach they just fired too. And he wasn't make Brent Proud was making, I think it was 4.75 this year. He was going to make five next year. Um, Franklin was making over eight at Penn State. So if he takes less than that, he's taking a pay cut. He's working for free from what he was going to be making. No, it's a lot. It's a lot there. It's a lot there. And so I'm going to hold off on saying that it's a great hire because it's only a great hire if it ends up working out. It's a great hire on paper only in the sense that Frank Beamer is the guy that they're all still trying to replace down there. They replaced him with a group of five coach, Justin Fuente from Memphis. That didn't work out. So they replaced Fuente with a defensive coordinator who'd never been a head coach before, Brent Pry. That didn't work out. Now you're hiring a name brand coach, uh, but will you give him the resources to work with? So, wait and see. It's a nice move. It's a nice try. Let's see. Um, any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, kind of taking it reverse order. Penn State spends a tremendous amount more money on football than Tech does, but Penn State also makes a tremendous amount of more money. The Big Ten is on par with the SEC for what they receive in revenue from the TV networks, and the Big Ten is still debating about injecting private equity wealth into the conference. Which, if that happens, who knows where the revenues are going to soar to. So it's really not a fair comparison to not a fair analogy, apples to apples, to compare Penn State with Virginia Tech, or any ACC program for that matter, even Clemson or Florida State probably. And if you go back to the landscape of college football has changed so much. If the last meaningful, relevant, whatever word you want to use, Virginia Tech teams, let's say, to we have to agree that it was back with Coach Beamer. Is that a fair assumption?
Oh, and it's not even his last, his 2011, 2012-ish. 2011, I think, is the
Right.
last, really good year they had there. Yeah.
And that was when a lot of your success depended upon high school recruiting. And Tech did very well in the state. Right now, neither Tech nor Virginia is doing very well recruiting in the state of Virginia. That's the other schools are reaping those benefits. Clemson's, the Penn States, the Alabamas. Um, but now, 2025, high school recruiting, I think I said it to you, and I'll take credit for this one. It's not about the James Franklin, it's about the Ben Franklins. Um, I don't know how much effect having a Franklin recruiting the 757 or wherever. I think those kids are looking for a payday. And so I think it's your program, it's how much you invest, how much these kids see that they're going to make for a couple of years. And then you have to wonder, is it worth the investment of paying a high school kid a lot of money to come there for maybe 1 year? If they have a great season, they're going to look for another a payday the following year. So I think I think it boils down to just the program, the investment in the program, what the kids see. And from that standpoint, it is a good hire for Tech. But it's only a good hire if it works. And as I put in a column today, this is very much to be determined. Stay tuned. We'll see how it pays out.
I was
Plays out.
able to get numbers there on spending. So while you were talking there, I was able to find what I needed to find. Penn State in 2024 spent 64 million on football. Virginia Tech spent 40 million on football. Overall, Penn State on athletics spent 212 million, and Virginia Tech spent 132 million. So a lot more money. And to say that it's apples to apples or apples to oranges, I guess it is in one sense. In another sense, it's not. They're all still out there playing the same football game. So
Right.
if you have 80 million less to spend overall and 24 million of that is less on football, I mean you're out there in the same marketplace trying to acquire talent. And if you've got a significant amount less to acquire that talent with, you're at a disadvantage. That's why they're trying to raise more money. And hiring a coach like James Franklin as opposed to, luring a JMU coach away or a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator from somewhere else who's not proven is if you're trying to play big time, that's how you do it. That's the way you do it. So, I mean, Virginia, on its own respect, yes, Virginia hired its most recent football coach, Tony Elliott, current football coach, was not a proven head coach. He was, in fact, never been a head coach before at all, but he was Clemson's play caller. So, I mean, if you're going to hire a guy away, you hire a guy away who, had pedigree, had been offered a job at Tennessee, he was offered the job at Duke, and took Virginia's job. Whereas Virginia Tech kind of went the cheap route. No offense to Brent Pry, but I mean he was the co-defensive coordinator. He wasn't even the guy at Penn State. That's one of the ironic parts of it too is that they went from hiring James Franklin's DC to hiring James Franklin. So um,
Franklin's replacing the guy that used to work for him.
exactly. I'm guessing Brent Pry won't be the defensive coordinator for him at Tech.
I'd say that's probably a pretty good assumption.
That'd be a little awkward, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Hey, before we jump to basketball, I'm gonna open a can of worms here.
Okay.
Um, and I guess you can just call me Debbie Downer, which is probably a pretty appropriate. I just saw that, and it's also confirmed that UVA is going to open the football season next year against NC State. It will be counted as a conference game, where this season it was a non-conference game down in Raleigh. It's going to count as a conference game, a UVA home game, and they're going to play it in Brazil. Tell me what I'm missing on how that does not make sense,
Oh,
or how that does make sense.
you may have read my column, you may not have.
Oh,
So,
you've already jumped. No, I have not. I did not.
oh boy,
Breaking news here.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, this word got out last night. It was an NC State sports news website that had gotten this word first. And it's still not UVA has not confirmed anything. You know, UVA Athletics has not confirmed anything yet, but as you can guess, I've got a FOIA request into UVA to find out what the heck's going on as far as all this goes. But no, yeah, UVA, yeah, the to backtrack just a slight bit, UVA and NC State, I think you mentioned played a non-conference game this year. It was part of a home and home. Next year's game, I still don't understand how it's not a how it's NC State people are reporting this as going to be a conference game. Virginia's future schedule for next year already has 8 conference games on the schedule. So
But next year's going to 9.
it's going to 9. Yeah, that's true. Um,
So there's an extra game available.
okay, UVA's future schedule still lists the game for next year as a non-conference game with NC State. Okay, so it's not been updated
So
yet by
now
the
that
UVA.
we're going to a 9 game schedule, that's obvious. That's going to go to a conference game.
Well, yeah, yeah, I'm just telling you, UVA's future schedule on their website still listed as a non-conference game, but also still listed in Charlottesville. Um, Bigger than that to me though is that okay, so right now of the 8 conference games listed on the schedule, 4 home, 4 away, then there is what Norfolk State and Delaware are home games next year in September. The Virginia West Virginia game was already moved to Charlotte for a $2 million floor guarantee, probably making more around 3 million for that game. And now this game, the Pack Pride Report, that's the website that broke the news. The Pack Pride Report has this game being played Labor Day weekend, so it'd be the opening weekend. Because our first home game scheduled after that is the Norfolk State game on September 12th, a Saturday. So Labor Day weekend can mean anything from Thursday to Monday, from Thursday September 3rd to Monday September 7th. Um, but it only leaves 6 home games on the schedule. And Scott, here's the problem I got into among the many problems. This year's UVA football team that we've talked about on Monday at length, and we're all talking about in the UVA fan base, 9-2, win one more game, you're in Charlotte, win that game, you're in the college football playoff. Um, so, I mean, the fan base, I mean, you'd be expecting the fan base to just buy season tickets out the yin yang after this season's over, right? Because man, look at this. UVA football won 11 or 12 games this year. Can't wait to go to next year's season. And then the next year's schedule is, oh, it's Delaware, it's Norfolk State, and it's 4 ACC games, and there's no marquee games. It's like Carolina and Cal. You know, there's no Virginia Tech on the schedule. There's no Florida State on the home schedule. And our 2 best games are in Charlotte and in Brazil. That's a big middle finger to the UVA fan base, is what that is. And then, I mean, a reader brought this up. I was thinking this myself, and I didn't put it in my column last night. You got to travel down to Brazil. It's an 11-hour flight to get down to Brazil, play a game, and then fly 11 hours back. And I know that the game after that's Norfolk State, but it's still, I mean, Virginia Tech played a Monday night game in the Tyrod Taylor era, their last good year. You ask what the last good year for Tech was? It was 2011. They played Boise State on a Monday night, and they had JMU on Saturday. So short week, very short week. I mean, 2 days less, a short week. That JMU team wasn't very good that year. That JMU team went 6-5, didn't make the playoffs at FCS, but they beat Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech was on a short week after playing in DC, not playing in Brazil. I mean, there's a million ways this game makes no sense, Scott. And
Well,
so
it makes no sense on every level. And the, if you think back, the West Virginia game that is now being played in Charlotte, that was probably done because the rationale was we weren't we weren't even coming close to filling Scott Stadium halfway.
yeah, that contract was signed a couple years ago. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you can do the math, but somebody should have been figuring out a way to get out of that this year because you put a good, as we have been harping on for years, you put a good product on the field. and you're going to put 55 to 60,000 people in Scott Stadium, which next year, coming on the heels of what we've done this year, that's very possible. And we're giving up a home game to go to Brazil to play a game that if you lose, it could discombobulate you for the next couple of games.
Hey, if we win, it can
Even
discombobulate
if
you
you win.
because of the travel involved. I mean,
And NFL teams do it all the time, but NFL teams go to the site a week early.
well, they do it all the time, but like one fan who wrote me about this today said he's a fan of the Minnesota Vikings, and he feels like as a fan of the Minnesota Vikings, they made one of these trips to Europe earlier this year, and as a fan watching the team, said, man, it ruined the 3 weeks after that for them. And we're not talking about if you played this stupid game in Brazil and all you were doing was giving middle finger to your fan base and then had a bye week afterwards. Okay. Okay, at least you get the bye week afterwards. Fine. You get to, rest a little bit after flying 11 hours there and 11 hours back. And I'm sure the team will probably both teams will do some fun things when they're there. Okay, great. But we're not. We're playing September. We're coming back. We're playing Norfolk State. Then we have another game. I think the West Virginia game is the third game, and then we have another game at home. There's something you're playing 4 games in 4 weeks, and one of them is in Brazil. So whether you win or lose, it's the first game of the season. They're going to be exhausted all season because of this. Because of this, not. I mean, there was a big deal being made, Scott. Remember a couple weeks ago, we went to play at Cal. You fly 5 hours across the country, and oh my God, we had to, do all these things to do that. Nah, this and on top of that, then the big FU to the fan base in the sense of the best game on the schedule, or one of the two best games, NC State and Wake Forest, are not in Charlottesville, and they could have been and should have been. That it just none of this makes any sense from any standpoint.
No, not to me. And like I said, I'm just now reading it, so I don't know. Maybe there'll be some. It would have been nice to for the university to put out a press release explaining it too. And most of us, from what I'm reading, found out about it through the NC State site.
Not even NC State's official site. It was
Yeah,
NC
it's
the
a
NC
fan
State
page.
reportings, the fan, just the equivalent of their 20. I think it is actually a 24/7 sports site. So not denigrating them. It was good reporting on their part. They heard a rumor and confirmed it with how they can confirm it. But yeah, I don't know though that anybody at UVA could talk me into thinking this is a good idea. It's a money grab. I mean, I did the math. I got the contract through FOIA for the West Virginia game when we found out about that one. I think it was 18 months ago or so that we found out about that one. And reading the contract, there's a guarantee of $2 million. You can, and when you do the math on ticket, if the game's a sellout, Virginia and West Virginia both can make something like 3.1 or $3.2 million. And I say make, that's not profit. That would be your total pay. Then you got to pay your expenses out of that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's still more than a game day. Now, when I wrote the column about this, the game day at the time, we were looking at average crowds of 40,000. And, and then went in and got the actual revenues for UVA Athletics. And I figured that UVA Athletics in 2024 made about 1.3, 1.4 million per games, for home games. So to get 2 million guaranteed, and then a possibility of 3 million, yeah, okay, we'll get a couple extra $1 million out of this. Fine, great. Um, but so I imagine that the Brazil game will be even more than that to make you give up a home game. But that's great. More money but in the grand scheme of things, a couple of $1 million when your budget, I mean, Virginia's budget is in the 160, 170 million range, and it's going up from there. Um, to tell your fan base, hey, thanks for supporting us, but we're only giving you 6 games next year. That's chintzy, man. That's all I can say. That's chintzy.
And it's not going to be, I've heard some, I stay at JPJ. I'm there early, leave late, and so you get to hear a lot of things. I hear that there's a lot of disgruntlement with UVA being in this Greenbrier basketball tournament because for the average fan, they can't afford to go.
Hell yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
um, for a pair of tickets to the game, you had to buy the package, which included the accommodations at the Greenbrier. Pair of tickets, I wrote this down. Pair of tickets were over $4,000, including the accommodations. Most average UVA fans aren't going to be able to spend that. So this is kind of the same thing with Brazil. The average Virginia football fan is not going to be able to make that trip to Brazil. It'll be interesting to see how many fans UVA does take there. And I agree with you. This is not a good look for your when you're trying to sell season tickets.
Well, I'm gonna put a different perspective on the Greenbrier thing. You teams, basketball coaches and programs schedule tournaments, put schedule themselves into tournaments all the time. Virginia last year played in the Bahamas. We've played in Florida, in the Tony Bennett era. There were a couple of trips to Florida, and in those times. So another trip to I think they went to the Bahamas in the championship year, 2018, 2019 as well. This is just closer. I mean, Florida
Chris,
or
getting to the
Bahamas.
Bahamas isn't that all that expensive.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, it's not in
They're out of
Charlotte
the country.
either. It's not,
Yeah,
it's out of the, you gotta go out of the country. And you're not giving up home games there. Virginia football is, you can play you can play 6, 7, or 8 home games. Virginia football next year now is scheduled for 6. That's the least you can have.
right.
Basketball is still going to have 15 home games, or 17 home games, I think it is actually. So we're not giving up home games. These will be our first 2 games away from JPJ this weekend. We are giving up 1 or 2 home games next year in football, right at the time that our football program is finally, for the first time in many years, winning. And so, yeah, I think that's a little different. I mean, and plus, if you live locally, you can drive to Greenbrier and come back home. It's because there's a day in between games. So, I mean, if you really want to, if you want to, brave going over those mountains at night, I guess you can go do that and watch a basketball game in a ballroom instead of in an arena. But yeah, it's just yeah, it's $1 million here and $1 million there when the budgets are what they are. I don't know that and plus money comes from TV. Money comes from I don't know. It's really bothersome. But
Yeah,
well,
and for fans that might want to go, I just looked at SeatGeek. You can pick up a ticket for the Northwestern game Friday night for as low as $250.
yeah, because there's probably I haven't looked to see how many seats they're even putting in there.
1,300.
1,300. Okay, that's why the tickets are going to be high. And then, I mean, for the Greenbrier, they're paying. I did not do a full year for this one to find out what we're getting paid to be in this one. Basketball is probably not very high. It's not going to be $2 million like for football. It's probably more in the 100, $200,000 range. We'll pay our expenses and get a couple games out of it, and maybe get a little profit at the end of the day, but not much. Um,
Right, right.
but for the Greenbrier, I mean, they're paying that money to, get people to stay there. So, um, and good for them to do that. They had a tournament this past weekend, and oh boy, they had they had the likes of like VMI, and it was like the mid-major, not even mid-major. It was like small conference tournament. Um, this past weekend because now I got on their email list. They send me all this stuff all the time now. So they had a women's tournament out there. I mean, Charlotte does the same thing. We're playing a basketball game down in Charlotte against Dayton. As it turns out, the same day as the ACC championship game, which, if things work out the right way,
Could
there
be a fun day.
there might be some UVA fans in town that have something else to do during the day, including us. So, but yeah, but they pay for those games too. I mean, the Charlotte Sports Council, gives you money for playing basketball. They're just trying to draw people in to spend money there, and I understand all that. The Brazil, why? Why Brazil? Why? What is it with Brazil? Because the NFL played there. Was it this year they played? Maybe this Labor Day weekend. Why, let the NFL go back and deal with that crap.
Yeah, the opening night, the Chargers and the Chiefs.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's
I'm
right.
pretty certain the Chargers and
And
Chiefs played
I
them.
think it was, yeah, you're right, and I think it was on Amazon. And which is why I didn't watch it because I mean it's just I'm an old person, Scott. I don't like changing. I don't like having to change over to an app when I can just sit there and watch like Hogan's Heroes on my regular TV. So,
Right.
uh, yeah. So anyway, okay. Well, enough of Brazil.
Yeah, sorry I did that. So let's talk.
No, no. I will yell. I'm going to yell at them a lot more. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you got that up. I got that out there. Yeah. Let's talk some basketball. We mentioned Greenbrier this weekend, Northwestern and Butler, and first test for this team. I thought Marshall was going to be something of a test. Turned out not to be, but we get to see this team now with some duress for the first time, and I'm kind of curious to see how they'll react.
Yeah, I did as well as you. I thought Marshall would be. I thought the way Marshall played in the second half, which they played very competitive. I don't know if that was more of a testament that they were just woke up and played better, or else we went kind of eased off the gas pedal. I think if you ask Coach Odom, it was more of the latter that
Yeah,
he didn't like the way we handled. We kind of did get a little sloppy in the second half. All of the turnovers, the stat sheet didn't really say so. It just didn't look like we were playing with as much urgency.
they weren't running the offense the same way. They weren't getting the shots. Yeah, it was. I think our guys checked out a little early.
Yeah, which you can label that as human nature, I guess. But the one thing that I'm pleased with, and I did a little research when I found out we were going to be on today. Um, I think that this early season, if you watched as much basketball as I've watched, and I know you watch and some of the other ACC teams, you look at the scores. I think this has been uh, so far. It looks like Coach Odom has really done a good job of building this roster. Like there's some questionable scores in the ACC this year. Georgia Tech last night beat Georgia Southern by 2 points.
Hmm.
Uh, Boston College was in a struggle with Hampton, team we just destroyed. I think they ended up winning by 8 or 9. Syracuse hung on and beat Monmouth by 5. Um, Even last night, North Carolina and Navy.
Yeah. NC
So
State kind of struggled to beat
it
VCU, and I don't know that this VCU team is going to be like Odom's or some of those other VCU teams. We kind of follow the A10 teams in our state. I don't know that this VCU team is quite the level that. So yeah, so NC State top 25 struggled there too. Yeah,
and we're doing what we thought we should, what everyone has, what we think we should do when you're playing a cupcake schedule. We're devouring them, and we're
yeah,
we're
yeah.
pretty much doing it early. The Rider game was kind of a game and a half, I believe, but the rest of it, just like the Saturday game against Marshall, the game was over at halftime. Virginia jumped out early. They made a statement early and then just kind of put it in neutral. There's been some years that even with Coach Bennett, the final years of Coach Bennett, we lost some of those cup games. We got beat by Navy at home. I believe we got beat by American at home.
Yeah, and even games that of those nature that were wins were very nerve-wracking wins. There were Vermont, another Navy game. I mean, so yeah, the when you're right, when you're given cupcakes to feast upon, you're supposed to feast upon them, and so far, and this is with a team that's I mean, literally all new guys. So that's the challenge is that they play each other all summer and all fall, and then you go out there and you start playing against other guys. It can be different, and they've done what they were supposed to have done so far. Yeah,
The schedule does get, it does improve. Northwestern's a Big Ten school, and Butler is in the Big East, correct?
that's right.
So, those are by far they're going to be the better of the teams we've played yet. But I really like watching the team play. I am pleasantly surprised of how quickly they seem to have meshed. Um, and I think a lot of that is just credited in how the type of personality that Coach Odom is, his team building, the things they did once the players got on grounds. They went on trips together. They spent a lot of time together, and I think that was by design in order to allow them to get to know one another because this could have gone the other way just as easily. That they could have been, you know, out there playing one-on-one ball, hero ball, whatever you want to call it. And some of these cupcakes could have been much closer, but uh, I like what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and what is, I did a column on this yesterday, I think it was, where I looked at, what we've known since we sent you on your field trips last winter when
Right.
when we had the idea that Ryan Odom was, if not the candidate, he was certainly one of the two that Virginia was looking at to be the next coach, and you got to go do some fun things at the Siegel Center. And we started paying close attention to VCU because we wanted to learn how UVA was going to play based on what he did there at VCU. And we see how, I mean, I'll pull this column up real quick. I mean, we know what they like to, what he likes to do, I should say. I don't want to say they. What he likes to do from a basketball standpoint is, he likes his guards to attack the lane. He wants shots at the rim from either his guards or his bigs, or in the lane from his guards or his bigs. No mid-range shots. He wants, kick out for threes. He wants lots of foul shots because if you're attacking, you're going to get to the foul line. Um, the offensive rebounding, which leads to more offense, either right at the basket or kickouts to threes. The full court press doesn't necessarily lead to turnovers, but it wears the other team down and forces turnovers sort of that way. Uh, and fast break points. So I'll go through this because I think it's really interesting, the contrast to what we've seen for 16 years, the 15 years of Tony Bennett, the 1 year of Ron Sanchez with the Tony Bennett's team. This year, shots at the rim versus last year, 10 more per game so far this year. I know we've only played 4 games, but 10 more per game at shots at the rim. When you add up shots at the rim and shots in the paint, still 10 more per game. Three, 7 more threes attempted per game this season compared to last season. Mid-range twos, 5 less per game than last season. Less of those, or low percentage shots. They're shooting 65% at the rim, 50% in the paint. Last year it was 63% at the rim, 37% in the paint. 38.8% from three. Last year, 37.5% from three. The offensive rebound numbers are the most stark difference. I mean, those differences are pretty actually interesting. That especially the 10 more shots per game at the rim. 17.5 offensive rebounds per game this season, 6.8 per game last season. Second chance points, 12 more second chance points per game, 10 more points off turnovers per game, 10 more fast break points per game, double the number of free throw attempts per game, Scott. So, I mean, what you saw last year at VCU when you went on your field trips, um, he's through 4 games, he's already got this group of guys who never played together. They're already playing not just Ryan Odom basketball, but a higher level of Ryan Odom basketball than even probably he expected.
Yeah, much higher level, I believe. Yeah, I started going down and watching VCU play in early January because I think that was about early January when the little bird gave us a tip that, hey, this is pretty much a done deal.
Yeah.
You can look at all the names that are being bannered around, but Odom was the name that everyone knew was going to be the next head coach. So yeah, I enjoyed watching him play, watching him his VCU teams played, and I kept thinking, man, if these teams are playing that, if he's getting these guys to play that well with that level of talent, what's he going to do at UVA? Well, 4 games. It only has taken 4 games, and I'm already seeing it. I thought that I was going to have to be because I wanted Coach Odom from the very get-go. I've known him since he was a ball boy, since he was a 10-year-old with his dad on the staff. So I had an interior motive wanting him going to be the coach, but I thought early on in the season I was going to have to be his biggest PR voice up in the press area, especially to you. Um, but this has just been a delight to see this unfold so quickly. Now, having said that, I don't think it's going to be totally unexpected to see us lose a game or two
Oh, no, no doubt.
early on,
Yeah, yeah.
like this weekend in West Virginia, because the level of competition is going to be up a little bit or considerably, and and there's going to be turnovers that are going to cost us. Right now the turnovers that we're committing aren't really a factor because we've got such big leads. But so it's going to still be a process. But early on, I am tickled, Pink, about how well he has meshed this club together.
What I am most impressed with, I guess, is that he's playing 10 guys and and really not an 11th only because Devin Tillis is hurt. He got hurt after the Villanova exhibition game, and he had a minor surgery. I say minor surgery. I'm reminded of Al Gross saying no surgery is minor if it's you on the table.
Right.
But Tillis should be back in the next couple of weeks. I think the indication is so. He'll have 11 guys that he'll want to start playing on a regular basis, and when he sticks, no matter who he puts in the lineup, when whoever's on the floor, and this is something we've not been used to with the most recent Tony Bennett team since the championship team in 2019. Tony would put some guys on the floor, and you'd look at some of those combinations and say, who is going to score here? I mean, who's going to bring the ball up the floor in this group? Um, and I don't feel that way with this group. I mean, he's got 3 point guards, for example, Dallin Hall. Going into the last game, he was only averaging 3.7 points per game, and then Hall had 18 points. Obviously on any given night he could put up big numbers if you need him to. Going into the last game, Chance Mallory, the freshman, was the second leading scorer on the team. He had the Dallin Hall night, 5 points, 5 assists. You got Elijah Gertrude, who is still getting his feet under him from being out for a year with that the injuries from that scooter accident. But you got 3 point guards who can play. You got bigs who can score, and Testa Ritter and Johan Grunlow that we haven't had bigs who could score since the Jay Huff era. And even then we didn't get the ball to him. He had to set screens and shoot threes. So, but both those guys can score in the paint. Also, Ugana on Lindsay can score in the paint and can hit from three. I mean, those guys are versatile. Um, you've got big guards who can score. Malik Lewis has had some big nights. You've had Jakari White and his Jakarmi. I love those. The Jakarmi guys are hilarious. There's such a good fan base there. You got Sam Lewis, another big, those big guards who can get in the lane and score and hit threes. I mean, I go down this list and say, man, there is not a guy on this roster to me who doesn't look like he fits. And we've kind of had to make excuses for years for why does this guy play? Why does that guy play? In the Tony Bennett years, and we don't have to make excuses for these guys. These guys all look like ballers. Um, and now you got opposition. You got Northwestern and Butler this weekend. You got coming up. You got some games Dayton and Texas, and of course then the ACC schedule kicks in sometime soon. So um, I am looking forward to win or lose. I'm just looking forward to seeing these guys play because yeah, they'll take some lumps. There'll be some off nights, but I think this is a fun team to watch. Not just fun because they score a lot. They had 100 points the other night. It's just a athletic group. They play a entertaining style of ball, and they seem to play it well. I love everything about this change that we've seen, and I love the Tony Bennett era. I learned so much about the pack line, and I defended it so well. The embrace the pace, the mover blocker offense. Not disparaging that at all, but it is refreshing to not have to
You know
apologize.
what I was thinking about driving home from the Marshall game Saturday was two different thoughts, basically based on the same premise of watching the pace that Ryan prefers to play. I like watching a 25-point lead that versus an 8-point lead that feels like a 25-point lead. You
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
Tony's teams. Oh, if you're down to UVA, if you're down by 8 points to UVA, it's as much as if you were down by 20. Well, I like a 25-point lead that feels like a 25-point lead. The other conversely, on the other side of it, is if we get down by 8, with Tony, it was like being down by 20. We get down by 8 with the pace we're playing, we can wipe that out in about a minute.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you watch NBA games and a 10-point deficit is reversed within a couple of minutes or less. Often.
And what's so weird about it is because you and I talk about this on Press Row. I mean, the number of possessions per game is not that much different.
It's a
Um,
little
it,
bit more, but it
it's
hasn't been much.
it's a little bit more, but it's not much. But we would always argue because we had to because we were defending UVA basketball against the whole world that seemed to hate us for all those years. Oh well, yeah, it's the style of play is what keeps the games close. So yeah, we would get in those tournament games and it'd be you know. It's going to be closer because we play a slower style. Um, that style of ball did artificially keep games closer. And okay, so yeah, 8 point lead feels like 20, but it's only eight. And so if they hit a couple threes, eight is two. If you're actually up 20 and they hit a couple threes, all right, call timeout, you're still up 14. I mean, there's some things here that we haven't even had to feel yet for a long, long time that are going to become apparent. I mean, not artificially keeping games close because that was and Tony's style was very risk averse. Um, and Odom's style is not. I mean, talking about the offensive rebound numbers as an example. I mean, Tony's approach was we'll send one guy to the offensive boards, and then everybody else has got to drop back because we don't want other teams to get easy baskets. Um, and so that's risk averse. That's like we would rather not get the offensive rebound and prevent them from getting an easy basket than we would get the offensive rebound and maybe they get a breakaway. Odom's approach is I'm sending 4 or 5 guys to the offensive glass and I'm making the other guy decide. Do I keep 5 guys back on defensive rebounding or I try to leak a guy out? And so instead of being scared of a fast break, we're saying if you want a fast break, great. If you don't, we're going to get the offensive rebound. We're going to score. And so, the whole 94 feet of defense thing. We're not trying to steal the ball with 94 feet of defense. There's actually some similarity into what Bennett wanted to do. He wanted to wear you down by making you work really hard in the half court. What Odom wants to do is make you work hard 94 feet. But the average possession length, I noted this in the column that I wrote the other day, Scott. It kind of confirms what I thought I was seeing with my naked eye. Average possession length is longer under Ryan Odom than it was under Tony Bennett. So he might be playing you 94 feet. He might be playing fast break ball. He might be making we're offensive rebounding, not dropping back. But he's making you work even harder than Tony Bennett did on offense. We're getting those
Exactly.
shot clock violations that we thought were a thing of the past. So there's similarities, there's differences, but I think what I like the most about Odom is he's not scared. He wants you to have to react to him instead of him reacting to you.
Yeah. And I saw that last year at VCU when they were playing conference games. They, I had to look at the stat sheet at the end of the game and to just to confirm that what I was seeing wasn't exactly what I was seeing. Because what I was seeing was a team that just ran the ball up and down the floor. But then looking at the stat sheets, the total possessions were similar to what Tony ran at Virginia. Just a couple of days ago, I was having lunch with a friend, and his comment to me was, "Man, we are just. I love the way that Ryan's playing. He's playing so fast. He's moving the ball up and down the floor. It's just so much different than Coach Bennett." And I said, "Well, let me ask you a question." Knowing the answer already, I
Yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
"If I gave you, I'm going to give you that a number that Coach Bennett was playing to. Number of possessions were usually in the low 60s with Coach Bennett. What do you think the number of possessions are averaging right now? And I think this was before the Marshall game. What do you think we're averaging right now?" And his comment was probably 80 or 90. I'm like, wait a minute, this is an NBA game. First of all,
Yeah,
it's only 40 minutes. It's not 48. When I said mid 60s, he was just completely dumbfounded by that.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
how can that be that we're only possessing the ball a couple of more times, yet we're scoring in the 80s and 90s, and Saturday we got 100, and yet our defense is not suffering that much.
Right, right, right. It's because his approach is he's still making you work hard on your end of the floor, like when you're on offense, because it takes you longer to bring the ball up the court. I mean, it just the difference between surrendering, the first 60 feet of the floor, bring it up, no contest. We'll let you bring it up, and then we'll make you work here. Versus, you got to just get the ball up the floor, and you got to do that every time you come up the floor. I mean, even after missed free throws, our guys are back there in
Right.
their face, much less anything else. So,
Yeah, and you made a good point. If you watch it Friday night, if you watch the game, when we're pressing full court, they're not pressing really to hound the ball handler and get a steal or anything like that. I
they're
mean,
not
they'll
doubling they're not doubling the ball handler on the inbound.
right.
Yeah.
They're just they're putting a little more force against getting the ball across the timeline.
Yeah.
And you do that every single time, every single possession, it's going to wear you down a little bit more.
If your point guard is your primary point guard, he's the guy who brings the ball up the floor for you, and he plays 34 minutes a game, and he's got to bring the ball up the floor with pressure. If there's 65 possessions in the game, he's got 65 times he's got to bring the ball up the floor, not just walking it up or dribbling it up with nobody in his face, but he's got to work his way up the floor. He's got to cut left again, you cut right again, run around the screen just to get the ball in the front court, and he's got to do that 65 or 70 times. Yeah, that by the it's Ryan uses the term cumulative effect.
Right.
Um, because he's not just using one guy to defend your one point guard bringing the ball up the floor that many times. He's using Dallin Hall, then he's got Chance Mallory, then he's got Elijah Gertrude, then he's back to Dallin Hall. Sometimes he might put, Malik Lewis on the. So you're one guy doing all that work against three or four or five of our guys. Yeah, second half, your tongue's gonna be hanging out your mouth, but you still got to run your offense. Whereas our guys are getting 20, 25 minutes and they're getting, regular rotations and everything else. Yeah, it adds up. And so, it's the NBA approach is what it is. The more I watch and when I watch our team, Scott, and then I watch the league pass, the NBA league pass, I mean, the offense is modern. Um, there's so many things that you see on NBA games that our guys are running. Defensively, certainly a lot of similar. I mean, switch. This is something I just noticed really for the first time in the Marshall game because Marshall really, I like their offense. Their offense is a very fast-paced offense. Um, we were switching on everything, just like NBA teams do. And you have to do that though. That means you got to recruit guys who can play defense. Testa Ritter at 6'9" has to be able to guard a guard and guard a center, and run low as well, and Onyenso as well. Whereas in the old approach with Tony, I mean, your bigs guard bigs. There's some, you got to be able to help out in that kind of thing. But in Ryan's system, you've got to be able to guard one on one anywhere from 1 to 5, and everybody on the floor's got to be able to do that, or the defense doesn't work. And he recruited to that system. Now, I like that he was able to do that with nothing to show these recruits in terms of game tape. But for the future, um, you know,
This
guys
team is
can.
a walking billboard for recruiting
Yes,
for
yes.
next year. I mean, kids are going to they're going to love playing in this system.
If
Um,
if if you want to play in the NBA, it was a sell. We had to sell you on coming to Virginia in the Tony Bennett era because, oh yeah, but nobody plays the pack line defense in the NBA. Nobody plays the mover blocker offense in the NBA. But if you want to play in the NBA now, we run an NBA offense, we run an NBA defense, and we also you will get 15 minutes a game at the least. So that is going to open up recruiting to a much bigger group of guys going forward.
yeah, I agree 100%. And I was watching a program the other night, and I believe it was on the ACC network, and they were talking about the top teams, the upper echelon teams in the ACC, and they specifically mentioned Virginia not being one of those. The Dukes, the Louisvilles, the Carolinas. It's even early on. It looks like they're going to be 7 and 8 man teams.
Hmm.
Um, right now we're playing 10 and 11, and they're all playing productive. None of them are getting garbage minutes. They're all playing productive minutes. Uh, I think this is going to bode well as this season, progresses. Is having a 10 man rotation or 11 man rotation when you're playing a team that's 7 or 8. Um, this is what Ryan is building this roster for, knowing the grind that the ACC schedule is going to be come New Year's Eve when we open this the down in Tech, I believe, is our first ACC game, is it?
it probably is. What I was thinking is one of the things I did for many years covering the Tony Bennett teams was because his rotation would start this time of year, he'd be 8 or 9. But there was already, the ninth guy was already getting just a few minutes. By the time you got to ACC, you're probably down to 7. Um, and I made it a constant thing every February. Okay, let's start counting minutes, in average minutes, that the guys are playing. Because, until we finally broke through and won the championship in 2019, the teams the teams kind of wore themselves out. Because we won individual games because the Tony Bennett teams outworked you for 40 minutes.
Right.
But over the course of the season, I mean, they're human too, and they're going to wear themselves out. And so, I think a big factor in the reason that Virginia teams under Tony Bennett lost so many first and second round games in tournaments was because of, okay, we play hard for 40 minutes every game of the season, and teams, uh, when you get to one, do or die games in March, now they're going to play hard for 40 minutes. And we've got to play even harder. You can't do that. Plus, we've been playing hard since November, and they haven't been. And we were at a disadvantage. And so, what I am looking forward to with this team is seeing how that plays into January and February and March. The fact that we have numbers that we've not had before. 10, 11 guys who can play and will play. And So yeah, it's right now we're still talking about potential. I mean, this weekend will be interesting. I mean, Northwestern and Butler. I just snuck a peek at Ken Palm. Um, we're projected to win both those games, but they're both projected to be 1, 2, 3 point games. Uh, we're playing power conference teams, and these will be punches in the mouth that we have not had with this group yet this year. But um, yeah, it should be fun to see, just because they're ready. I mean, for people who want to look at a schedule and say, why did you schedule these cupcakes? Because this was a new group. They're playing a whole new system. The coaches, have to learn the players. Players have to learn the coaches. They had 4 games to work out kinks. There were kinks to work out. The NC Central game, they played zone, stopped us for 15 minutes of that game with their zone. Still scored 81 points somehow with a very ineffective 15 minutes against the zone. But the first game you mentioned, the Ryder game. I mean, that game was a lot of turnovers in the first half. The Villanova game in the exhibition game, I think there were 18 turnovers in that game. So,
Right.
um, they've progression. They've it's kind of like it's kind of a little harder each time. Odom and his staff have given the players a little bit more leeway each game, and they've grown. And now, Northwestern and Butler aren't projected to win their leagues or anything, but they are power conference teams, and these will be some tests. So I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to seeing them.
this is the way the game's played. And if you think back, I was thinking about this the other day. You know, the writings that I've done, it sounds like I'm comparing Odom to Tony and making Tony sound like he just, last couple of years he just was flamed out, which record wise it may have indicated that. But if you think back, this is the way the way it's being played now is completely. I don't know if Tony could have adapted to this, and if you remember Tony's a week before Tony announced his retirement, UVA went down and played VCU in the Siegel Center.
Hmm.
And from what we understand, they got their butts kicked up and down the floor. I'm wondering if Tony didn't come away from that thinking this style is not working. And I can't coach the way Ryan Odom is coaching. I can't recruit that way. And do you think that could have been the the um the end for Coach Bennett, and that seeing the way that the game had evolved, it was something he wasn't equipped to do. And I'm just wondering if that again playing a Ryan Odom coach team may have you know play into the fate of future UVA basketball. Now he's our coach.
I wonder about, I think we'll always wonder like what it was. I mean, he said at his press conference, Tony did last October, that he'd been thinking about stepping aside for 3 years and kept getting talked out of it. And credit to Carla Williams, you're supposed to talk your future Hall of Fame winning coach to not quit. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I wouldn't want. I've said this, about football, college football, college basketball. I would not want the job of a head coach of any of these programs because you're re-recruiting a roster every year. Um, that can be good. Football this year went from 5-7 to on the verge of perhaps a playoff berth with a really good roster, a good recruiting, and the investment made by the donors and all the pieces falling into place the right way, and then winning the games. But it can also work out the other way. I mean, look at South Carolina last year was a game or a quarter away from being in the playoff, and they're,
Right.
3-7, 3-8 this year, whatever they are. So, I mean, it can go from boom to bust. Hell, we spent 20 minutes talking about James Franklin. He was in a playoff last year, fired a year later. Um, so it can be boom or bust. I wouldn't want that. I mean, just wouldn't want that. But
And
uh,
the expectations of a fan base. I wrote a column for the ACC football notebook today, and I'm looking at it right now just to try to make sure I quote the note. Brian Kelly,
yeah.
who was lured from Notre Dame to LSU. LSU probably consensus top five coaching job in the country,
Oh, easily, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
top two,
Maybe top one.
maybe top one. Yeah, maybe top one. 100,000 people every Saturday night in Death Valley. Brian Kelly in little under 4 seasons at 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 LSU was 34-14.
He had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback.
Had a Heisman Trophy winner quarterback. James Franklin was 104-45 in 11 plus seasons at Penn State, and they were fired.
And you didn't put this in, but it just occurs to me, Ryan Day last year,
Ryan Day was close to being.
he loses to Michigan, and they're like, get rid of him.
Get rid
He
of him.
wins the national championship. Okay, don't get rid of him yet. I mean, it's not even like, hey, celebration, we won the championship. It's like, wait till he plays Michigan again this year.
I mean, it's unrealistic expectations that a that even a Coach Odom. If
Oh,
people are expecting Coach Odom to come here and win a national championship within a couple of years, and that's the bar he has to reach to surpass Coach Bennett.
all Tony Elliott has done for himself this year is set the expectations higher for next year, right? Because
Right.
you know what's going to happen. They're going to give him a new contract. I mean, he's got, I think it's 2 years left on the deal now. They're not going to make him coach as a lame duck for 2 years after winning what,
No,
even if
he'll
it's,
get a contract extension as soon as the season's over.
oh yeah, they're working on it
Because they're
now.
going to he may get one before the season's over because the transfer portal is going to open up and kids are going to want to know who the coach is going to be,
But we might give him a contract extension. We fly out to Brazil next year and get a couple guys hurt and limp back home and I mean, he might be back on the hot seat in October. So, yeah, it's not a good thing. And so, if I'm Tony Bennett and I've already made a mint, he's got a great house over there. I mean, which is, you know, I don't blame anybody for doing what
Got
they
Rick
do.
Carlisle for a neighbor. The
Yeah,
neighborhood's pretty nice.
I don't blame anybody for doing I'd rather be a pro coach right now. Because at least if you're a pro coach, you know, NBA or NFL coach, you're not responsible for recruiting the guys. You just coach the guys they give you. Um, in the college game, you're the coach, you're the GM, you're the everything about that. And so you got a little bit of insulation in the NBA and NFL. I mean, I say that, and then of course we've already had a coach fired. One of our guys, Trey Murphy's team, New Orleans Pelicans, their coach got fired, and it ain't like it's his fault that Zion Williamson can't stop eating and can't stay on the court. But
He's never met a buffet bar that he doesn't like.
that's not the coach's fault that that guy's not in shape. But anyway, It's they make a lot of money, and but so for Tony, I mean, love Tony did a lot of stuff. He raised the level, he raised the bar, and good for him that he doesn't have to live in this world that he was probably not for. He's not. No, there's no way that Tony Bennett's for this world of everybody's a free agent as the second they step on campus, and
Yeah,
his
someone asked me, "You think Tony will ever go back to coaching basketball?" And I said, "Yeah, it's quite possible. You know, Bridgewater may have an opening that appeals to him, or
yeah,
Hampton Sydney. But if you're an AD, why would you want to hire Tony? Because Tony's style of play is not induce. You know, it's not the way the game's played now. Tony knows that. He would never
and
take a
Tony knows
job
that.
like that now. He would. It's just the game. The game might evolve back to that. I don't know if
I
the
don't think
NIL,
so.
if the transfer portal settles down and players have to sign 2, 3 year commitments, maybe that would be enough to uh, entice him back into the game where he could build a program with continuity. But the way it is now, where everybody's a free agent every single year, this basketball team that we're talking about is going to have 10 or 11 new players next year. The football team, I just read a story. The football team could have 50 new players again next season.
I wrote a column on that yesterday too, where I looked at the roster. 50 might 50. I mean, you'll have 25 new guys guaranteed just because of prep. But I mean, the offensive line is going to need a lot of guys. The defense won't. Defense actually looks pretty good. But offensive line, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, you're going to need some numbers there, and numbers in general. But yeah, I mean that's just reality. That's just
Well,
reality.
you say the defense looks good. You're talking about eligibility,
Oh, eligibility. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
but some of those guys are going to command some bucks.
And
So that's why what we're hearing that if the $35 million payroll this year, NIL, however you want to call it, I'm going to call it a payroll because that's what it is going to probably go to in excess of 40 million next year. And that's just going to be to keep some of your players that you already have.
oh well, I assume that I'm going to assume that the money and the success will keep me if I'm playing there. If I'm one of those guys. So no, but the needs are the offensive line. They'll have to spend some money on the offensive line. Go back and read that column. If you're listening and watching this, I did a pretty in-depth piece on that last night. Where I looked at the position groups, and I mean it's because I even used the excuse it's a bye week. We have nothing else to write about with football, so good opportunity to do that. But yeah, and they'll need to get another $1 million quarterback, even though Kalen is the guy for the future. You can't just have one guy to be your quarterback. So
Yeah, we talked about that off the air. You're going to have $1 million fifth year player next year that knows he's not playing in the NFL, that is content to come at Virginia, work hard in practice, and be ready to go in and contribute.
oh, I'll tell you what, I'll
And
challenge you
for
on one
that,
thing
it's going to
there.
cost $1 million.
I want a guy who's a fifth year quarterback who wants to come in and win the job. Now, I'm not going to promise him, certainly. I'm going to say to him, we will leave it open, and if it's you and Kalen
Sure.
and you beat him out, good. But I don't want a guy who wants to hold the clipboard. I want a guy who wants to come in and win the job. And if he doesn't win the job, then he can, he knows he's got to, be the backup, and the backup can come in at any point. Chandler Morris got hurt in the first game. Now he's been playing, but he's been playing badly hurt since the first game. He ran into that brick wall at the goal line against Coastal Carolina. Um, so we've been playing all season long, one play away from needing the backup to be the starter. So hell, you might want to go out and get two quarterbacks, next year. I don't know if I feel good. I didn't feel very good. I don't know about you. I'm sure and I know you, so I know when I say this. When we were watching Cole Gear warm up in the Wake Forest game, when Kalen got hurt,
Hey,
um,
Chris, somebody pointed this out to me. When the backup warms up, when the two quarterback, even the starting quarterbacks warm up on the sidelines, and we pay a lot of attention to this, they always have a receiver or somebody that catches the ball and hands it to them.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, the third string quarterback, Gear,
yeah.
was catching his own balls.
He was, yes, he was. But he was.
That kind of tells you. we don't really have a guy that can, you're going to have to catch, have to catch your own passes.
Yeah, you might be the guy going in, but yeah, we don't have. We're not giving you a guy. No, but if the and he's so we got two guys who were three stars. Him and the Bjorn Jurgensen guy, um, who I have to presume. I mean, so Gear is the first of the. He's number one of the two freshmen, true freshmen they are. But yeah, I don't know if I feel good. If I don't try to go out and get two quarterbacks coming into class, just to compete. I mean, just to compete and that kind of thing. So, and then yeah, uh, and I'm already worried about next year, Scott, and we still got a lot to play for this year as
Yeah,
far.
and we I like how we kind of just very seamlessly went back to football. We were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about basketball. So,
Normally on November 19th of a year, we have long since stopped caring about football, much less talking about it. And here we are still talking meaningfully about football in November, so that's a good thing. Let's go ahead and wrap up here. This has been a fun show. I mean, we talked about Virginia Tech and James Franklin, more importantly, as vis-a-vis Virginia. Um, and then a lot of basketball talk. We talked about the Brazil trip, more basketball talk, then wrapping up with football. Good stuff. Well, Scott, we got to somehow get through the next few days until basketball. Basketball's with us back Friday night. Um, but we'll figure out a way to do that. For those who are still with us here at the hour mark, Scott has his column up today, ACC Football Notebook. Greg's grades were up today. Greg Waters had his weekly grades back from the Duke game, so that's a nice, thorough, in-depth piece there to get you back into that game. I've got a couple of basketball and football columns up. We'll be getting ready for the games this weekend in basketball. We'll keep our eye on the ACC football situation this weekend because if things go a certain way, Virginia could either clinch or put themselves on the verge of clinching a spot in the ACC championship game. So all that coming
yeah,
up.
and wouldn't that just deflate the Hokie fans coming to Scott Stadium on the last game of the season if they couldn't rain on our parade?
Yeah, I mean, I ran. I'll say this: I ran ESPN has a playoff predictor kind of app on their website where you can pick your team and then like the last two or three games, whatever it is that your team has, and kind of if they win this one and lose this one and win this one, what's their playoff chances? Um, it's interesting if Virginia can still get in the ACC championship game, lose to Virginia Tech, still get in the ACC championship game, win that game. We actually aren't 100% guaranteed to get into the playoff because the way it works the top five conference champions are guaranteed berths. Now, it's not likely that two group of fives would beat the ACC champion for a bid, but there's a small chance that could happen. So, I mean, yeah. So even if we clinch a bid Saturday, and what would have to happen there is Georgia Tech beats Pitt, SMU loses to Louisville, and those things are, I mean, very possible, if not, extremely possible. And then Duke loses to Carolina. If all three of those things happen, Virginia clinches without even playing this weekend. They clinch a
Right.
berth in the ACC championship game if all three of those things happen. But we
Well,
still,
and those are not realistic.
oh,
Duke
those
Duke
are.
is Duke is two straight lost two straight. Carolina's still Carolina, but
I think Louisville would be. I haven't looked, but Louisville's got to be favored at home, and then
Louisville should be favored at home, and they're
Georgia Tech's got to be favored in
play
that game. So those are things that are
very
somewhat
possible.
somewhat likely to happen. If they all three happen, if we hit the trifecta, but still so they can still let's give them some hope, Scott, that they can still try to rain on our parade, just so we can lure them into Charlottesville, get them to spend some money with our local merchants, and then then go home unhappy and have to watch us celebrate something on our field because we need to win. We're going to need to win that game to guarantee that if we win in Charlotte, that 100% chance we're playing Ole Miss or Alabama or somebody in a first round game of a playoff, which I cannot believe. 3 months ago, you tell me, 2 months ago, you tell me, Chris and Scott, you're going to be talking on a podcast about playing in a playoff game. And it's a realistic possibility. I would have thought you were crazy anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a very realistic
it's
possibility. And with this in this era that we're playing in, you can. I wrote in my story today that the ACC, these teams that are at the top of the standings right now, uh, the top four, of which neither Florida State or Clemson or Miami are one of them. These teams have made commitments to their football programs.
Yeah.
And it's paying. And look, it's paying off. Georgia Tech, Virginia, Louisville. I mean,
I'll give Duke spent $7 million on a quarterback.
Duke,
I
Duke.
mean, yeah, we're all trying. So hey,
We're all trying, and it's showing. And all of a sudden, ACC football is beginning to be relevant.
Virginia Tech hired James Franklin, whatever that's going to. I mean, Wake Forest is winning games. Wake Forest beat us. They beat Carolina bad this weekend. The ACC. We struggled for a few years. We were a Clemson and Florida State league, and when they weren't good, we none of us were good. Now, yeah, now we're trying. This is fun. This is fun. It's and it's fun for us because for so long. You know, 3-7, 3-9, 5-7, barely beating Boston College. I mean, yeah, it's fun to be in this position, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and for some of us that are a little older, we go back to the George's days, to the George Welsh days when we were consistently good.
Well, yeah, yeah.
And it's been 20 years of being out in the
Wilderness.
yeah, the wilderness, 20 years. And now we've kind of become relevant again, and with the investments and the donors seeing the return of investments, then this is something that I think is very sustainable at Virginia.
Yeah. It only took us 20 years to become an overnight success.
Right, right.
On that note, we will
We'll
wrap
take it.
up. We'll take it. We'll wrap up here on the show. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for the folks who watched and listened. And we'll talk to you again very soon.